Good there.
You're watching Medal of Honor with Daddy.
Hi, I'm Dave Wallace, and welcome to Medal of Honor, where we talk about metal, and we talk about vinyl, and we talk about metal on vinyl. Yes, that adorable little girl that you saw at the beginning was my daughter, my youngest daughter, trying to raise my third pure metalhead, hoping to anyway. We'll see if we get away with that, and Mother doesn't poison her with too much Taylor Swift. That was her introduction to the show, and as you know, if you've been watching this show, I like having viewers involved and having your introductions involved in the show as well. In fact, I actually scatter them throughout the show, usually 2 or 3 per episode. So I really would love for you to be a part of it. And it's really simple. All you got to do is turn on your cell phone, put it on selfie mode, hold it up, say you're watching Medal of Honor, and spout a few heavy metal song lyrics, whatever you can think of. Or say something funny, or do something interesting. Cleavage will get you on quick. Just anything interesting to be a part of the show. You don't have to be a great actor. You don't have to be a musician even. You can just be a fan of the show and just want to be involved. And send it to me at medalofhonorshow@gmail.com, and we'll put you on here. Maybe at the beginning if it's really interesting, and maybe somewhere in the middle, towards the end, somewhere. Anyway, let's get together and make this show interactive, okay? I want you to be a part of it. So this show is going to be very different. I know it's only our 3rd episode, and this is not a permanent change, but this episode in particular is going to be different for a couple of reasons. Number one, I'm getting ready to be on the road for about a week. Got to go visit some family, and I'm going to have to be editing this while I'm traveling, so I'm trying to get all my shooting done very early. That's another reason why I'm not really going to be doing the news segment this week, because I usually do that the last minutes to make sure of anything interesting. I'm also not going to do the regular 3 album reviews this time, and the reason why, the rest will be the same. The Honored Metal will be the same, and maybe some bin diving. I've got some other interesting albums I can show for that real quick, but the beginning of the show is going to be different. So we're going to be kind of combining, I guess you could say, the news and the reviews a little bit, all focusing around one band in particular. And this is actually a really important story that I really want to get out there. So if you don't watch the show regularly, if you're just somebody who tries to support me and watches 2 minutes and then moves on with your life, watch this full segment at least and share this. If you care at all about freedom and artistic expression, this is really actually a fairly important story, and I'd like you to hear it and pass the word on about this. Now, this is a story about an Iranian death metal band. Yes, you heard that right. Iranian death metal band. It's something you don't hear about very often. That's because in Iran, heavy metal is all heavy metal is deemed satanic, and it is illegal. So the band we're going to be talking about is a band called Arsames. And what's important to know about them is that they have recently been arrested and possibly going to prison for 15 years just because of a certain style of music that they love. Nothing actually satanic about it, but we'll get to that in a minute. But I want you to understand, this is the kind of thing that as Americans we really can't comprehend this. Okay? Imagine not being able to play a specific kind of music. You would actually go to jail for that. Well, it's happening. Check out this band. Throughout this, I'm going to be playing a couple clips of songs of theirs from their album, Immortal Identity. This song is called Cyrus the Great. just being honest, as Americans generally, we don't really know a whole lot about what's going on in other countries. Just to be fair, I mean, we are kind of self-absorbed. We don't understand why countries don't do things the way that we do. We don't even really understand how other countries work, really. I mean, a lot of Americans actually think that we're one of the only free countries in the world, when actually we're one of almost 100 free countries, and out of those we have the highest incarceration rate. So really there's 90 some countries that are more free than we are, so we don't even comprehend that most of the time. But even that freedom that we do have, which is great, we tend to take for granted. In fact, so much so we've got it good enough that we have to invent new stuff to bitch about every day. We don't have any clue what it's like to really have our freedoms taken from us. Like Arsames just wanting to play a particular kind of music and facing prison time for it. Seems a little insane to us, right? But it's actually what's happening. So just a little bit of a background here. In 1979, after the Iranian Revolution, the country became a fundamentalist Islamic state. Now, if you watch my videos, you might have seen that maybe just like a week or so ago, I posted one about, that was just a little short little talk about heavy metal being kind of the devil to some people, just because we're a little bit more on the darker side of storytelling. And then that I talked a little bit about religion as it gets into society, the effect it can have on the fear-mongering. And this is the perfect example. Iran, once they became an Islamic state, they allowed religion to influence their government. This is why it's very important for us to maintain a separation of church and state. Because what happened back then actually is that anything that they didn't understand, as happens with religion, they feared. And then they just assume that it's going to destroy their faith and their way of life. And so back then, in '79, they basically outlawed all rock music and heavy metal, of course. All of it was deemed satanic. Doesn't matter what you're singing about. It was the style of music, their definition of satanic. Anyway, now in the 80s, they had a president named Mohammad Khatami, who actually kind of relaxed a little bit, at least on the rock music, but metal remained satanic and punishable with prison sentence. So as you can imagine, I mean, you know what it's like for bands there. I mean, you can't just go show up at a local club or a bar and play. You can't advertise it. You can't tell people. You can't put up flyers. You're going to go to jail just for even attempting to do it. And yet, there are still bands out there who are doing their damnedest to bring metal to Iran, including Arsames. Now, Arsames, they were founded in 2002. That means this band's actually been around for 18 years. You want to talk about an underground scene? This is underground. Okay, the band was established by Ali Madarshahi, who was he's the vocalist, but he was also the band's first drummer. Now, since then the band has gone through quite a few lineup changes, and as you can imagine, they don't get to play a whole lot of shows. They don't get to advertise much at all. When they do a show anywhere in their own vicinity, it's very quiet. It's very last minute. They're kind of left off the bill until they can make sure that they can do so safely. Just imagine band practice in Iran. Like, I don't even know how the hell they would do that. It's got to be really difficult for them to get together secretly and play death metal. I mean, well, check this out. So as I said, in 2010, they actually put out an album called Immortal Identity, which actually, I mean, as far as I know, you can get in a digital but I haven't seen it on any kind of actual physical state, whether it be CD or album or anything like that. But there's the digital version, and they've also done a couple of EPs of covers. In fact, in 2011 they did a small EP of cover songs. It's called Tribute to the Warriors of Metal, and it includes covers of Amon Amarth and Creator and Sepultura, to name a few. They also have done a cover of Slayer's Rain of Blood, I believe. These are just little things that they've been able to do. You know, I mean, in the 18 years that they've been out, they've only been able to play, you know, so often. They do have a couple of videos you can actually see on YouTube, but those had to be filmed in secrecy. Just not able to do some of the simplest things that a lot of band members in America just, you know, do on a whim. You can't advertise it on Facebook. I mean, Ali Madarshahi has talked about how just being afraid to do a phone interview because of, you know, if the government might be tapping their phone lines. And yet they do find time to perfect their craft, and they do so beautifully. They actually have managed to incorporate a lot of ancient Persian and Arabic sounds into their death metal. It's really quite interesting. They actually call it ancient metal as their own style. And of course, you know, as Americans, one of our attitudes towards this situation would be, well, why don't you just leave? Well, it's never that simple to just leave, especially from a country that isn't necessarily a free country, but also it's their home. Now, we understand here as Americans that obviously over the last decade, whether it be Obama or whether it be Trump, people are always bitching. One side or the other is complaining about whoever's in charge, and we find reasons to be upset with the people in power, and yet we all still understand that we do love our country. We love where we come from. And I think that's important to note that this band, Arsames, actually feels the exact same way about Iran. They grew up there, their families are there, they ran around the streets as children, you know, all their best memories, and they feel that they have a very beautiful heritage and history. They love where they come from, and they just are not happy with people in power and the things that they're, you know, of course, causing them to. Basically, their own government has made them outlaws by stopping a kind of music for fear of what will do to their religion. So while these guys are basically outlaws, they see themselves as ambassadors, and that's actually really all they want. Is they want to be able to travel, and they want to let people hear their music. And interestingly enough, there's really nothing even remotely satanic about their music. I don't even know if they even say the word Satan in their music. All of their songs really have to do with their history and their culture. It also has a lot to do with the whole honor and brotherhood kind of aspects on it. I mean, really, there's very little in there that most of us would disagree with in their music. And they have much to be proud of. But again, it's a sound and a style that, you know, when people don't understand it and then they fear it, and it has caused us to be just awful that these guys are facing this jail time. This is a good example. This is from their song Xerxes, which is a little taste of Persian history. Okay, so getting to it. As far as I know, some of the band members were arrested in July. It's a little bit confusing. We're getting this sort of third-party story, but basically what we've heard is that they were sentenced with 15 years, but then they were able to bail out and are awaiting their sentence. So not really clear on how that works. I mean, you know, the American side of me wants to say, oh, they weren't actually sentenced. But I don't know how it works in Iran. I don't know how their court appearance is going to work. Will they get a chance to actually stand up and say, hey, we love our country and we just wanted to show the world how beautiful it is in our own particular way. I don't know. I don't know if they'll get the shot to do that or not. What I do know is that they are trying to kind of lay low right now. They're not really, doing a whole lot as far as publicly. They're not trying to raise too much awareness about it. It's different when you raise awareness in the U.S. than when you do so there. And so they're trying to lay low and keep quiet and not cause any trouble. There's no crowdfunding as far as I can tell at the moment. But what we do know is that they have a Bandcamp profile. And on there you can get the digital downloads of their music. And there's also some t-shirts on there and stuff. And I really would like to just spread the word about this band as much as possible for people to go and donate. Now the album Immortal Identity in its entirety is on there. It's 9 tracks, 8 songs, and it has this really cool 2-minute intro which has the kind of ancient Arabic kind of vibe to it. Really neat sounding. The whole album on there is $7 or more. You can donate more on Bandcamp to most of these bands. $7, I say round it up to 10. Even if you're not a huge death metal fan, you probably know somebody who is. You can actually email it to them as a gift on here, okay? Spend $10 and help these guys out. They've not asked me to do this. I've not had any kind of communication with the band. I would like to actually, but I just wanted to, I don't know, I saw the story and I just thought, man, I can't imagine what it's like with all that I've been able to do with music over the years. And the fact that these guys really done some amazing work and they're not even allowed to promote it. And really that's all they want to do is just kind of get their sound out there and have that freedom. They'd like to see that freedom to be expressive about their music in their own country. That's going to take some law changes, and we can't really do anything about that, but we can support the band a little bit. So go on there. I got the album, I got the EPs, I got a t-shirt, and if you can go on there and spread the word a little bit, like I said, support their music or send it to somebody else. Share this video. Yeah, I do benefit a little bit from it. Not financially, of course, I just get more viewers, but if you share this, I want to get this story out there to as many people as possible. I think it's important personally. I hope you agree with that. And a lot of metal fans always talk about how heavy metal is this big brotherhood. Well, this is a chance to prove it. Okay, so show that you believe that this is a brotherhood by supporting this band, because they don't get to do some of the simplest stuff that the most local garage bands get to do all the time. So I hope you'll take a few minutes to do that, and definitely go on and check out their band page on their Bandcamp site. And really, even if you just share that is really a big difference. And you can follow them on Twitter too and give them a shout out. Just say, hey man, we're thinking about you, and show your support. So alright, so that is going to be the beginning of this show, and now we're just going to go ahead and move right into the Honored Metal.
You're watching Medal of Honor with Dave Wallace, the sexiest man alive. Is that good now?
Alright, for this edition of Honored Metal, we're going to do something a little different again. Basically, instead of, usually I do something that is fairly new as far as a release of something that's, a classic, but it's just kind of been re-released. This one actually was released about a year ago, actually, but I thought it was special because it's actually only about 2 weeks away as I record this, maybe 3 weeks, from the 15-year anniversary of the original release of this album. Also, I just fucking love this album. One of the few times that I would describe a band that is in some ways considered death metal as beautiful. This is definitely just amazing music. It is the Swedish death/progressive metal band Opeth, and this is the Ghost Reveries album. Now, what's the point of the re-release is actually a company that's called Music on Vinyl. They kind of take select albums that they like and they kind of make more of the audiophile version of it, so it's usually just a nice high quality recording, higher grain album, and just usually double album. They usually kind of focus on the audio part the most, but nice packaging as well. And this album actually came out originally on Roadrunner in 2005. I believe it was August 30th was the original release date. And just a phenomenal album. It's actually, because it was the first with Roadrunner, their 8th album actually altogether, this is when they really started to get attention from the American audience because of the distribution from Roadrunner. Now, as I said, Opeth, they are a Swedish band, and they were established in 1989. However, there actually are no original members of this band still remaining. Now, the driving force of Opeth and the just creative mastermind behind the whole thing since 1992 has been Michael Eckerfeldt. But yeah, he didn't come until 1992. He was actually only 16 when he joined the band. I say joined, but interesting enough, he actually was brought in by their original vocalist to be a replacement bass player for the bass player that he was going to kick out of the band. Now, he invited Michael over to practice, did not tell the original bass player or any of the other band members that he invited Michael to come over to replace him, and basically a fight ensued. The rest of the band quit, and Michael and the original vocalist decided to carry on the name of Opeth, which, by the way, I believe means City of Moonlight. But anyway, after a little while, I guess the two egos didn't get along too much longer, and eventually it just became Michael's band, which I kind of like that. You go in and you just take what you want, and that's a pretty metal attitude, right? He kind of took over. He saw the name, I guess, and kept with it, and has done a lot with it. Now, the band's debut album, Orchid, was released in 1995 on Candlelight Records. And like I said, they did 7 albums on Candlelight Records before finally getting the deal with Roadrunner, and that's when they released this album, Ghost Reveries. And then, of course, they continued on and have released some phenomenal albums since then, and they are still putting out albums, as a matter of fact. They've done 13 altogether, the latest being In Cauda Venenum. So they're still doing stuff, and looking forward to hearing more from them in the future. Now, of this album, as I said, this is just something absolutely incredible about this band. I mean, for one thing, they're considered to be a progressive band, and yes, they do have a death metal side. Definitely have the death metal vocals at times. But they're not chained down by that. Michael's voice, Michael, by the way, is now the vocalist, he's the guitarist, and he is the songwriter. He's the band, really. I mean, if we're just being honest. Phenomenal musicians all around, of course, but it's kind of his project now. And his creativity is insane, and he is capable of doing the death metal vocals, but he also has a very soothing, clean singing voice. And in fact, I believe they've actually done a couple albums where they actually didn't even put any death vocals on there. So it's kind of basically what he's feeling at the time. That's what he does, and I find that very admirable. The album that followed this one actually was called Watershed, reached number 23 on the Billboard chart, so that's actually a pretty good for a band, especially for a progressive band of any kind. In total so far they've sold 1.5 million albums worldwide, so they're not doing too bad. Now, of this album, Decibel Magazine once described this, I gotta read this quote to you because it's exactly how I feel about it. They described it as achingly beautiful, sometimes unabashedly brutal, often a combination of both. Definitely a very fitting description of this album. So many styles infused in this. I mean, there's elements of blues and jazz and classical, and obviously a lot of progressive in there. So just definitely a musician's band also. And again, this is the album where, I discovered them. Like I said, a lot of people in America, this is where they found out about Opeth, was really more just thanks to Roadrunner getting them out there. But because it's where I came in, then obviously it just becomes my favorite album. And this is one of those albums where I never get tired of listening to it. The diversity on this album is so great. And one of the ways I was always been able to tell that is, I'm a professional tattoo artist, and a lot of times when I'm working, if I have this album playing in the background, it's kind of one of those albums where from song to song, my customer will say, wait, this is the same band? Yeah, it's the same band. It's so diverse that it's oftentimes hard to tell. So let's talk about this particular album, Ghost Reveries. So one of the interesting facts about this album is that it was originally intended to be a concept album. As you know, we've talked about this on other episodes, but concept album is basically it's one long story that runs throughout the whole album, connecting each song into different chapters of that story. Now the story was actually kind of interesting. Michael actually wrote this story. He kind of was delving a little bit into, well, at least what he considered to be Satanism, or really it's more about kind of devil worship. But adding to the depth of that story is the trauma that this man's main character in the story goes through after he kills his own mother, and then ends up dealing with the emotional struggle with that, and then also selling his soul to the devil himself. He actually kills his mother thinking that that's what she did, and then he ends up following in her footsteps. It's an interesting story, but however, it actually didn't quite play out as far as a full concept album. As he was writing, some of the other songs just kind of took on their own life, and he kind of went with that. So several of the songs in here, quite a bit of them actually, do follow that storyline. It's just that they don't all necessarily link together. And you're not necessarily missing that if you're listening to the album. You're not necessarily catching that it's one continuous story. But if you know the story, then you can hear different parts that make it obvious that it came from that. So the opening track on this is Ghost of Perdition. This is one of those songs that came from the original story concept. It pretty much picks up right at the beginning with him struggling with the emotional trauma after killing his own mother. Perdition is the state of eternal suffering. So that's basically what the Ghost of Perdition is about. Great opening track. Track number 2 is Baying of the Hounds. Nice brutal track, but also has some beautiful melodies and interesting kind of 60s, 70s organ played along with it in parts as well. Baying of the Hounds is actually based on the play Comus, written by John Milton. Now, in the story of Comus, it basically has to do with a woman who is in distress, lost in the woods, and she is sort of seduced by an ominous character in the play. The character is Comus. Now, this is actually not Comus. This is based on that, this song Baying of the Hounds, and we aren't really told who the ominous character is. However, in the play Comus, she gets away, whereas in this song, maybe not so much. Track number 3 is Beneath the Mire. This song is really more of it has to do with the person kind of, the main character in the story who is slowly dying. Maybe his body's kind of rotting from some sort of disease, and he's kind of looking back on mistakes he made in following the devil, I guess. It's a really interesting vibe to it. It has this orchestral accompaniment to it that you'd have to hear it, but it actually kind of reminds me of like a James Bond kind of vibe to it. It's really unusual, but that's one of the things I like of the band is just some of the uniqueness to their sound. Track number 4 is called Atonement, and this is a really cool kind of trippy vibe to it. It kind of sounds like, I don't know, reminds me of almost like that Jim Morrison and the Doors kind of a vibe to the music. Almost a little bit of Middle Eastern feel in parts of it. Real mellow and, yeah, like I said, kind of trippy sounding. The song Atonement basically has to do with dying and waking up, finding yourself in a ghost form. Track number 5 is Reverie / Harlequin Forest, kind of a combination of tunes here, and really it's just kind of simple. It has to do with basically delving into insanity and the journey into that. Track number 6 is Hours of Wealth. It has like a fairly long intro to it that seems almost like a completely different song. It's very instrumental, and then when it comes to the song with the singing itself, it's very intimate feeling. It's really mostly just Michael and this organ accompaniment. It's really actually quite beautiful, but like I said, very intimate feeling. You would never guess that this is the same guy who is doing the death metal vocals on Banging of the Hounds, but just check out how diverse this band really is.
Looking through my window, I seem to recognize all the people passing by, but I'm alone and far from home. Nobody knows me. Never heard me say goodbye. Never shall I speak to anyone again. All days are in darkness and I'm biding my time. Once I am sure of my task I will rise again.
And track number 7 is The Grand Conjuration, has to do with the original story again, and this is basically the man kind of saying that he can't deal anymore with the guilt and the anguish of killing his mother, and so he basically is summoning the devil, hoping to make a deal in order to get rid of some of the pain that he's feeling on the inside. The album closes with another very intimate song. This is one that you would definitely describe as hauntingly beautiful. Almost a Knights in White Satin kind of vibe to it. This is called Isolation Years, and it's basically a little different, but this is a man who is reading a suicide note from a woman that he loved. Altogether, just an amazing album. The artwork on this is an artist named Travis Smith, who did not only did the cover, but he did this little small lyric booklet with just this cool art on the front there. There's also this poster that comes with it. Let me put this aside. So there's your Opeth poster. Smoky candle look to it, and then even the two LPs, they have a nice. If you look at the center, the art that's on there. See if we can get that in there. And then there's one other one here. Just hauntingly beautiful artwork to go with the hauntingly beautiful music. So again, Music on Vinyl has done a couple of Opeth albums. I have a few actually, and just beautiful work on this. So if you've never heard this band before, you need to check it out. Go get yourself a copy of this. That is going to be it for the Honored Metal. So let's move on to the end of the show.
So I've said it before and I will say it again. You get nothing for nothing. Expect it when you're backseat driving and your hands ain't on the wheel. You are watching Medal of Honor with Reverend Dave Wallace. Enjoy.
All right, so before we go, I'm going to leave you with another bin diving find of mine. Now, we started the show off with some Iranian death metal, and then the Honored Metal was Swedish progressive death metal. So it only stands to reason that we should wrap this up with some Floridian death metal, some of the originators, the pioneers, and the band that actually got me into and introduced me to death metal. The band is appropriately named Death. And this is the Human album. This is the album that got me into them. Now, of course, a lot of people know, I mean, when it comes to death metal, these guys are kind of the godfathers of it. They're the pioneers of death metal. And obviously the name says it all. But, you know, most people would think of first their previous albums to this, which would be Scream Bloody Gore or Spiritual Healing, or actually before that was Leprosy, then Spiritual Healing. This was the fourth album. But as you know, whenever you discover a band for the first time and that you fall in love with them, usually the album that you discover them, that ends up becoming your favorite. It's just that experience that you had when you first discovered it. And this album, Human, really does stand out from the previous works, because it's definitely a lot more progressive. Just an incredible album, musically speaking. This is kind of one of those albums that, especially at the time when I discovered it, I just really was getting into Rush. I was learning how to play bass. I was getting into progressive music in general. So this one just really struck a chord with me. Of course, the brainchild behind this band was the legendary metal god Chuck Schuldiner, who actually he died in 2001. He was the driving force for this band. It's actually been through many lineup changes, and they actually established in 1983. And you know, over just many years of, you know, different trial and error, other musicians who've been in this band have gone on to do great things, such as James Murphy, of course, was in the band, and Gene Hoglan did a stint. This album actually had a lot of critical acclaim. Rolling Stone actually listed this as number 70 in the top metal albums of all time. Not that Rolling Stone really knows shit about heavy metal, you know, but Guitar World magazine actually did post them as number 84 of the greatest guitar-oriented albums of all time. So that's pretty good. So wonderful songs on this include, my favorite, of course, would be a Suicide Machine. But there's an incredible instrumental song on here called Cosmic Sea. Their first video came off of this album, which was Lack of Comprehension. And then this one in particular had kind of a nice bonus for me, a bonus track that I didn't actually know about that they originally recorded. I had this album when it was new. I saw them on this tour. They toured with Pestilence. It was a really, really kick-ass show. And I didn't know that there was a cover song bonus track out there anywhere that they had recorded at the time. It wasn't on the cassette or the CDs that I originally had, but it is Kiss's classic God of Thunder. They did a really cool version of that on here. So this is actually just a really cool find. It just brings back a lot of memories for me, of course, and just, I mean, you know, if you're into death metal, if you're into progressive metal, this is just great to have in your collection. Again, you know, Chuck Schuldiner, he died December 13th, 2001. He actually had been through a battle with brain cancer, and actually was kind of starting to come out of it, and things were looking up for him, but his body was still very weak, and unfortunately he caught pneumonia, and that actually killed him in his weakened state. So definitely somebody who's sorely missed by the music heavy metal community. So anyway, just thought I'd share that with you. And also, if you're interested in hearing more about this band, there is, if you have Amazon Prime, you have Prime Video, there's a documentary on there. You can look up the documentary about the band Death. So check that out. But anyway, that was my cool find for the week. So that's going to wrap up the show. Just want to remind you to make sure you check out the band Arsames. Spread the word about them. Share this if you could. That would be really great. And go and donate a little bit of money. Get some music from their site. Their Bandcamp page. But yeah, spread the word. And there's other bands, by the way, that are going through the same thing. I recorded this over a couple of days' time usually, and I actually just this morning just found out, read a story about another band from Iran called Confess, going through the exact same thing. In fact, several band members were arrested. 2 of them actually got away and found asylum in Norway. But the others that were arrested are facing jail time and 74 lashes. That's just fucking brutal that, that kind of shit still exists for something like that. I mean, I'm all for castrating child molesters, stuff like that, but, playing in a heavy metal band, these guys are going through this bullshit. So there's a lot of these bands in Iran are going through this. Obviously, the Iranian government has decided to crack down. So check out those kind of bands and show some support for them. And as always, if you don't mind, go through all the social media for Medal of Honor, the Facebook, the Instagram, the Twitter. Subscribe here, and feel free to send me any messages, any questions. What you think of the show, you can put it in the comments here, or send a message to medalofhonorshow@gmail.com. And yeah, that's going to be it for now, and look forward to seeing you next time. Until then, keep the horns up, keep the needle down.